Imperial Panic, why the US is seizing the entire hemisphere. What looks like chaos on the global stage is often something very different when you've lived through multiple cycles of financial stress and geopolitical realignment. As someone who spent decades inside the system, watching markets react to fear, policy shifts, and power struggles, I can tell you this. Moments like this are when clarity matters most. In this video, we break down Imperial Panic and explain why Imperial Panic is driving the United States to lock down resources, supply chains, and strategic territory across the Western Hemisphere. From energy security in the south to critical minerals in the north, Imperial Panic reveals a survival strategy, not expansion, not ideology, but control. Understanding Imperial Panic helps investors separate headlines from signals and panic from positioning. And yes, Imperial Panic has real consequences for currencies, commodities, defense spending, and long-term capital flows. If you're feeling uneasy about where the world is headed, you're not alone. My goal here is to replace anxiety with perspective, so you can think clearly, protect your capital, and recognize opportunity when others only see risk. If you found value here, please like and share this video so more people can cut through the noise and make informed decisions. And if you'd like to support independent, research-driven analysis like this, consider a small donation. It directly helps keep this channel focused on education, not hype. Stay steady, stay informed. That's how you win over the long term. Hey folks, real talk. I've been in this game a long time. I've seen bubbles inflate, markets crash, and entire investment themes go from magical to obsolete overnight. If there's one lesson I've learned the hard way, it's this: the world changes. And when it does, you better adapt before the crowd does. That's exactly what's happening right now in global strategy, geopolitics, and markets. And yes, it connects right back to your financial future. For about 70 years after World War II, the United States was the world's anchor. We policed trade routes, stabilized currencies, and pretty much shaped the world order. That system worked. It gave us capital markets and American investors like you and me a predictable framework to build wealth. But today, that framework is breaking down. The dollar's dominance is under pressure. Old alliances are shifting, and the traditional levers of influence just aren't as effective anymore. So, what's replacing that old model? It's a new strategic emphasis that puts America's own backyard first. You might call it a Fortress America approach, and that's something you, as an investor, need to understand, not fear. This new strategy isn't about isolationism, it's about security. It's about securing critical resources and choke points that we once took for granted. Think about it. Energy resources right here in the Western Hemisphere, including heavy crude from nations like Venezuela, have suddenly become far more geopolitically relevant. But there's something even more under the radar for most investors, and that's critical minerals. These are now national security assets. Let's take Greenland, for example. You've probably heard the name, but let me tell you why it's now a hot topic in geopolitical strategy discussions. It isn't about the scenic icebergs. It's about the rare earth elements sitting right beneath that icy surface. One project in particular, the Tambries deposit in southern Greenland, is now recognized as one of the world's largest undeveloped rare earth resources. We're talking tens of millions of tons of these minerals, including a high concentration of the heavy rare earths that our modern high-tech and defense systems absolutely depend on. Now, why does that matter? These rare earths, elements with names like dysprosium, terbium, neodymium, and praseodymium, they're not just some obscure rocks. They are essential ingredients in everything from the high-performance magnets used in electric vehicles and wind turbines to stealth fighters, advanced radar systems, and precision weapons. The US military and our entire industrial base simply cannot operate without them. A modern fighter jet, for instance, requires tons of these materials just to function. If you can't secure them, the machines we rely on for our defense and our economy don't work. It's that simple. And here's where the investment angle comes into sharp focus. For decades, China dominated the entire rare earth supply chain, often controlling 70 to 90% of production and processing. That was a massive strategic vulnerability for Western industries and our defense networks. We were completely reliant on a geopolitical rival for the building blocks of our most advanced technology. Today, that's changing. Initiatives like US involvement in Greenland's Tambries project, which includes government backing, potential financing, support, and future supply agreements, are all aimed at breaking that chokehold. We are finally moving to secure our own supply chains. These are complex, costly projects that take years, even decades, to develop. Mining in a place like Greenland isn't like running strip malls or flipping tech stocks. The environment is harsh, the infrastructure is sparse, and the economics are extremely long-term. This is a game of patience and strategic foresight. But the strategic narrative has shifted, and where strategy leads, capital tends to follow. So what should you take away from all this, as someone trying to build and protect your wealth in this new era? First, start thinking about strategic resources as long-term macro themes. These aren't just minerals, they are the structural inputs into the industries and defense technologies of the future. The world of tomorrow will be built with these elements. Second, diversification today means more than just a mix of stocks and bonds. You need to consider how shifts in global supply dynamics, like this pivot towards secure, Western-controlled critical materials, can offer completely new types of opportunities for your portfolio. And finally, stay grounded. Don't chase headlines or get swept up in the hype. Instead, look at the underlying fundamentals and the government policy trends that are reshaping entire markets. The shift towards a fortress America isn't a short-term trend. It's a fundamental rewiring of the global economy that will play out over the next 10, 20, even 30 years. The investors who understand this shift and position themselves accordingly will be the ones who not only protect their wealth but build real, lasting prosperity in the decades to come. This is the big picture. Don't lose sight of it. Ever heard of dysprosium? I bet for most people, the word just flies right by. It sounds like something from a chemistry textbook, totally disconnected from our daily lives. But I'm here to tell you that this obscure element is a hidden pressure point in our global system. It's the kind of thing that can quietly break entire industries, shake up stock portfolios, and even redefine national security. If you're not paying attention to this, you're missing a massive piece of the puzzle. Let's get straight to the point with a fact that should make everyone sit up and listen. Right now, China controls about 99% of the world's refined dysprosium supply. Notice I said refined asterisk, not just mined. That distinction is crucial, and it's something most people completely overlook. The raw ore might come from various places, but turning it into the high-purity material needed for advanced technology, that happens almost exclusively in one country. So, why does this one element matter so much? Well, the United States military and its vast network of defense contractors rely heavily on it. We're talking about the high-performance magnets inside guided missiles, the advanced electronics in fighter jets, and the sophisticated sensor systems that give our military its technological edge. All of these critical components need dysprosium to work, and the supply chain for that dysprosium leads directly back to our main strategic competitor. This isn't just a business problem, it's a massive vulnerability. I've seen this movie before. I've watched markets operate under the dangerous assumption that supply chains are always stable and reliable. They're not, and China has already shown its willingness to use this leverage. They introduced something now known as the 50% rule. This rule is a game changer. It states that export controls can be applied to any product that contains Chinese origin minerals, even if those minerals are just a tiny fraction of the final product. Think about that. A complex piece of machinery made in Germany or Japan could be blocked from export if it contains even a small amount of a specific mineral that originated in China. Officially, these export controls are temporary, scheduled to last through 2026. But let's be realistic. When a country has that much leverage, temporary policies have a funny way of becoming permanent. The supply could be throttled or cut off at any moment, for any political reason. This isn't some far-off, theoretical risk that we can file away for later. This is a live wire, sparking right now. And that brings us to a place that suddenly jumped from the icy fringes of the world map to the very center of geopolitical strategy, Greenland. For decades, it was just a massive ice-covered island in the North Atlantic. Today, it's viewed by Western governments as potentially the only viable non-Chinese source for dysprosium that can be scaled up quickly enough to make a difference. Not in 10 years, but right now. The urgency is palpable. This is where a project called Tambreez comes into the picture. Tambreez is not just another mineral deposit. It's considered one of the most strategically significant rare earth deposits on the entire planet, sitting right there in southern Greenland. And a company called Critical Metals Corp is in the final stages of acquiring it. working to lock down the last 25% of its offtake agreements. Now, this isn't your typical corporate acquisition. The stakes are so high that, according to reports, the White House is seriously considering taking a direct equity stake in the project. Just let that sink in for a second. When does the US government step in to buy a piece of a private mining operation? It happens when a project is no longer just a business venture, it's a matter of national security. A line is being crossed here, and once it's crossed, things don't just go back to the way they were. The objective is crystal clear. Insiders are calling it the creation of a dysprosium shield for the US military. The goal is to build a secure, independent, and reliable supply chain that cannot be used as a weapon against America or its allies during a crisis. It's about de-risking our most critical defense systems from geopolitical blackmail. But here's the part that should really get your attention, especially if you're looking at this from an investment perspective. China isn't just now waking up to Greenland's importance. They've been playing the long game. For more than a decade, they have been quietly investing in Arctic infrastructure. They've been building ports, funding scientific research, and establishing logistics networks. They've been laying the groundwork, piece by piece. So what we're re-witnessing now is a high-stakes strategic countermove by the United States and its allies. The intent is not subtle at all. The moves being made today will determine who has the upper hand for decades to come. Let's journey to the very top of the world. High above the Arctic Circle sits the Pufik space base. Most people still know it by its old name, Thule. It's the northernmost US military installation on Earth. During the Cold War, this base was a silent sentinel, a critical early warning station, watching for Soviet missiles arcing over the pole. Back then, the threat was simple, terrifying, and binary. If something flew over the Arctic, it meant the end of the world could be just minutes away. The entire planet held its breath, waiting for a signal from this frozen outpost. Fast forward to today, and the Arctic is roaring back into the global spotlight, but, for reasons that go far beyond Cold War nostalgia, the US has allocated nearly $4 billion for Arctic readiness and space force operations in the 2026 fiscal year alone. Let's be clear, that is not symbolic money. That's the kind of serious capital governments spend only when they believe a region is on the verge of defining the next global era. So, why now? The answer is as simple as it is profound. The ice is melting. What was once an impenetrable, frozen barrier for most of the year is rapidly transforming into a network of new global shipping corridors. The Northern Sea Route, the Northwest Passage, these aren't just lines on a map anymore. They represent a fundamental disruption to global logistics. Think about it. Time, fuel, insurance, costs, everything changes when ships can cut across the top of the world. Instead of traveling all the way around continents, shaving weeks off a journey between Asia and Europe isn't just an efficiency gain, it's a paradigm shift. And here's a rule that has held true throughout history. Wherever trade flows, power inevitably follows. Russia understands this perhaps better than anyone. They currently operate the world's largest and only fleet of nuclear-powered icebreakers, giving them unparalleled year-round access to the region. They don't just see the Northern Sea Route as an international waterway, they treat it as sovereign territory. In practical terms, that means they can set the rules. They can charge tolls, enforce their own regulations, and exert incredible leverage over any nation wanting to use this shortcut. It also means military reach. The ability to move naval assets quickly and quietly through these waters is a game changer. This brings us to one of the most critical geopolitical choke points that most people, and even most investors, have never heard of: the GI-UK gap. That's the stretch of ocean between Greenland, Iceland, and the United Kingdom. During the Cold War, this gap was the firewall of the North Atlantic. It was the maritime kill zone where NATO navies planned to intercept Soviet submarines before they could break out into the open ocean and threaten Allied supply lines. Today, its importance is surging once again. If you can control the GI-UK gap, you can effectively control access between Russia's northern fleet and the vast expanse of the Atlantic Ocean. Lose control of it, and you lose the ability to contain threats before they reach the critical trade and financial arteries that keep the global economy alive. Now, let's zoom out from the Arctic and look at the bigger picture, because the pattern becomes even clearer. The strategic posture of the US and its allies is no longer one of confident, forward expansion. It's shifting to a posture of denial. There's a growing and well-founded concern that so-called Chinese science stations popping up in strategic locations are actually doubling as intelligence hubs. We've already seen this playbook in places like Djibouti, right next to a critical shipping lane, and in the Solomon Islands in the Pacific. Once you see a pattern like this twice, you stop calling it a coincidence. It's a strategy. The Western response has been the quiet development of a new doctrine: total denial of rival access in key spheres of influence. The North Atlantic is being systematically shaped into a NATO-controlled zone, a fortress lake. Greenland is being fortified in the north, becoming a key anchor of this strategy. Meanwhile, strategic pressure is being applied elsewhere. Think about the economic and political moves around Venezuela in the south, a country with massive oil reserves and a complicated relationship with China and Russia. These events aren't random or disconnected. They are part of a coordinated, hemispheric strategy. The official creation of a unified Western Hemisphere command says it all. This isn't just a bureaucratic reshuffling. It's a declaration of intent. It's about locking down North and South America as a single, integrated defensive system. The goal is to create a secure, stable, and self-reliant bastion, insulated from the instabilities of the rest of the world. It's a return to the principles of the Monroe Doctrine, but updated for the 21st century, with advanced technology and a much higher sense of urgency. This is about building walls, both physical and metaphorical, to secure the home base. And here is the crucial part that matters for anyone trying to understand where the world is heading, especially for investors. This new posture is not a sign of overwhelming confidence. It is the signature move of a power shifting to defensive entrenchment. When great powers stop expanding and start digging in, everything changes. Capital reallocates on a massive scale. Supply chains, once stretched across the globe in the name of efficiency, begin to shorten and reshore to friendly, secure territories. National energy strategies pivot from global markets to domestic production and regional alliances. Suddenly, sectors that were once considered boring or low growth become critically important. Defense spending obviously increases, but it's more than just that. It's about infrastructure built for resilience, not just for growth. It's about securing a reliable supply of rare earth materials, which are the building blocks of modern technology. It's about logistics, shipping, and cybersecurity, the connective tissue of this new, fortified economic bloc. One of the biggest mistakes I ever made early in my career was assuming that markets only move on exciting growth stories, the next big tech innovation, or a breakthrough consumer product. In reality, markets also move on fear. In fact, fear often moves capital much faster and more decisively than optimism does. And right now, the geopolitical map is being redrawn by a profound sense of strategic anxiety. The great powers are choosing sides and building fences. Understanding this defensive shift, this great entrenchment, is no longer optional. It's the key to navigating the turbulent decade ahead. When I hear people talk about Project 2029, I don't hear policy jargon. I hear a survival mindset. I hear the sound of a world quietly admitting that the old rules of globalization no longer work the way we were promised they would. For decades, we were all told that open markets, free trade, and financial integration would create a stable, prosperous world. And I believed that story. I built entire investment portfolios around it. And when the cracks started showing, it cost me real money long before it cost me my certainty. What we're witnessing now isn't just a political squabble. It's a fundamental shift away from globalization and towards something far more primal: resource control. Let's look at the facts. China manufactures the world's goods. The global south controls a huge share of the raw materials needed to make those goods. And the BRICS nations, that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and a growing list of others, are actively building financial systems designed to function without the US dollar at the center. This isn't about ideology. It's about logistics. Project 2029, in this context, represents a kind of economic autarkia, self-preservation strategy. The logic is blunt. If oil can't be reliably bought with dollars, then you need to control the oil itself. If rare earth minerals can't be purchased through friendly markets, then you need to secure them physically. This isn't how a confident, expanding empire behaves. This is how a system behaves when it senses that its dependencies are becoming dangerous vulnerabilities. Autarky, at its core, isn't about growth, it's about survival. And when survival becomes the #1 priority, cooperation always takes a back seat. Now, here's the part most people don't want to talk about: the blowback. The message being sent, particularly to Latin America, and frankly to much of the world, is that sovereignty is conditional. The old Monroe Doctrine isn't just being dusted off, it's being enforced with economic and political muscle. But that kind of posture doesn't build alliances, it builds fear. And fear has a funny way of pushing nations directly into the arms of alternative systems. We're already seeing it happen. Under India's upcoming BRICS presidency, plans are moving forward to rapidly expand local currency trade. Now, that might sound like a technical detail, but its implications are profound. Every single trade settled outside the US dollar is like a brick being removed from the foundation of American financial dominance. It happens slowly at first, then all at once. I've lived through financial blowback on a personal level. I've put my trust in systems that promised stability, only to realize far too late that that stability was conditional. That's exactly why I'm telling you this. My goal is not to scare you, it's to prepare you. When nations retreat into fortresses, they often discover too late that those same fortresses can become cages. Isolation feels like strength in the beginning, but over time, it kills flexibility, it stifles innovation, and it limits opportunity. And the exact same thing is true for investors. So what's the real lesson here? Diversification is no longer just about stocks and bonds. It's about diversifying across systems, currencies, supply chains, geopolitics. If your entire financial future depends on one single narrative continuing forever, you're taking on far more risk than you probably think. You don't need to panic, but you do need to be honest. Honest about where power is truly shifting. Honest about what resource scarcity really means for the global economy. And honest about the difference between building resilience and living in denial. I've made costly mistakes so that you don't have to repeat them. Pay attention to the structure underneath the headlines. That's where the real story and the real risk is always hiding. If this perspective helped you see the world a little more clearly today, please take a moment to like and share this video. You never know who might need to hear this information before it's too late, and together, we can help more people make smarter, calmer financial decisions. Thanks for watching.